Fletcher. Now sit back and prepare to be entertained.
Welcome back to the Dripping Bucket podcast, where I still have Michael Fletcher in his chair as a meat puppet, and I've also got Daniel Coolbaugh on with us to talk about the massive urban fantasy world he's about to launch for us. And I guess earlier we were talking about how you just received your first round of feedback, and I feel like handling feedback is a really important thing for writers to be aware of and be ready for, because it's part of the job. we have to be willing to listen and think, and we don't necessarily have to accept all of the feedback, but we got to hear it. So I'm really curious to find out from you, you said it went better than you expected.
Oh yeah,
but also
totally.
What did you expect? And how did it branch off from that? Did you have a relationship with your first beta reader before, where you could kind of know what to expect from them, or was it kind of a blind?
I mean, Logan and I did a podcast. Logan D. Irons helped me out first. H.L. Tinsley said they both approached me. I was just going to use some people from my podcast group on Facebook, and they both messaged me first thing. Were like, "Hey, can I help you with this?" I'm like, sure. And I told people, I'm like, I'll give you, once it's done, whatever you want, all the merch, all the stuff, for free, for helping me out and getting the acknowledgments. And they're like, we just want to read and help you out. So thank you so much to both of them. So Logan got back to me, and, we've been talking, here and there about different stuff. I don't want to give too much away because it is his pen name, but him and I have a lot of things in common with our background.
Right.
So we've had conversations. We both love history. So we geek out about that, so we do have, we've had somewhat of a relationship, but I mean, I would say Mike and I know each other better, over the last couple of years with social media and stuff. So it just happened to work out, though, that I do want to mention, Logan's novella, Bridge of Kings, was absolutely amazing. It's historical fantasy, and it's his prequel novella. So he was doing the same thing. Yeah. And his book just came out, Osa Blood, last week, May 7th. He said that to me. I started to read that. I'm like, here's somebody that understands my character, because it's a similar character to one of his main ones. So I knew it was going to be, good feedback. And he's written 14 books. Yeah. And was I right? Because he got right back to me, and he, so I was worried that Nathaniel, when I first wrote him, was too much of a jerk, and too much like a alpha male, or you know what I mean? I didn't want him to come off that way. But I was worried then I wrote him a little too soft, and that's kind of what Logan said. He's like, I think you need to, make it. He needs to be a little harder. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a soldier.
Yeah. He has to be, right? So I was trying to kind of walk that line, and he's like, you're kind of over here, but I felt like I expected that. And some of the unit stuff, it was just really hard because I'm not a Marine, and I've been trying to find a consultant. And Logan's worked with certain people in the past on his books. So he's help me with some of the military jargon, fixed a couple of the weapons and stuff. He's like, you should kind of look at these references for the unit, because you want to really feel. That's why, one reason why I like Nathaniel is he's really loyal, particularly to his unit.
Yeah.
And he loves country and everything. He loves, red, white, and blue, but it's really his men and the people that he cares about that he'll do anything for. And that's really what sets them off in The Hunted. A friend who has a situation going on, his kid's missing, and they're like, hey, how can we help? And they actually go against orders to do so. And it sets them on this crazy night where they're going to have this event with this supernatural occurrence. And I just was wondering if I had hit certain marks for, if it felt right with the progression of the scenes. And he said, cut your opening scene and replace it with this other one. And I was already thinking that was going to be the case. I had actually said something kind of like that.
That must be exciting when you when you get that back. It's like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
yes. I was already kind of thinking that, and the fact that you also went to that same place is like, absolutely, we're on the same page, and I'm so ready to hear
It's
all
like
the rest of this stuff you have to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like
flip side,
reaffirming,
though,
you
is
know?
when you get the feedback that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Have you run into that yet? Where somebody, you get either conflicting feedback from two different readers, or a piece of feedback where you're just like, I don't know about that. You're
I
sort
did
of
get
forced
that.
to.
Not with this one yet, and I know I will. Because I just
Yeah.
have like 3 amazing minds other than my other crew who I read with. Like I just know stuff's gonna come up, and I'm gonna have to like kind of pick and choose. My developmental editor, I know, like I'll be able to take like, hey, I think these things need to change. What do you think? And then they're gonna be amazing. So I feel like I'm in the best hands between those 3 people. So I'm, waiting on some other, alpha reader feedback, stuff like that. But I want to do the alpha reader process to help me, because you know how it is. You get to a point you're like, I need feedback. Like I can't do anything.
I can't see it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
couldn't look
that.
at it anymore. So
well,
actually,
and also like you don't even know. Like I found, at least for myself, especially with my second book, where I came to a point where like I didn't even fully remember what was on the page anymore, because I had changed it so many times. So it's like I don't even know how these characters read to somebody anymore, because I've done so much to this stupid book, and I just need some other human being to yay or nay, basically. And actually, I was really lucky with Fletcher that he had time to do it.
Instead of some other human, you got me.
I got Fletcher. But as it happened, like, just speaking of feedback you didn't expect, it's no surprise to anybody who knows Fletcher's books that a lot of his suggestions were, you need to kill all of these people. and
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah,
they needed to die.
Yeah, and for me, I was like, well, I don't want to kill that many, but being able to talk to him about like, no, this is why this person is gonna live for now. It helped click into my head like exactly why I was even telling the story anymore. And then with that self-awareness restored, I was able to be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 rewrite the ending. And then it was just like, bam, it was done from there. So even the feedback that you don't agree with can sometimes really be magic.
No, I feel like that's fair. Like Logan had said, who's this guy? And I'm like,
yeah.
And I said, he's like, is this like a throwaway person? Like, why did this situation happen? I said, no, that person's going to come back. And it's kind of cool because you're like, oh, and I told him why. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. I said, yeah, and there's like a scene that happens with this character and Nathaniel, and it really helps to kind of set the story along, running parallel to just the events. And without that thing happening, so many other things in the first 3 novellas wouldn't have happened. And you find out later, you're like, you think it's a throwaway thing, and you're like, oh wow, like he thought ahead of that. So I was like, yeah, no, he's staying because of this. And once I explained the reason, he was like, oh, that makes total sense. I did on my like Thief's Ambition, my fantasy, though, I was getting conflicting feedback, and I just it was all over the place. And that's where I was like, okay, this is just not working. And I think that's hard for indie in particular, right? Because we want to go. And that's where I'm doing these novellas, because I know exactly where I have to go. And I even have another trilogy of them ready to go. And I have other adventures and stuff and different things that have happened to him that I think would just be cool to kind of talk about. And yeah, so I just was like, I just kind of got to go with what's working. And when I was writing the novella and it was just working, and I just feel better now, with getting that affirmative feedback. And I just think it shows that I was ready for this character in this story, but not the other one.
That makes sense.
I think it's hard for us sometimes, right, to admit that.
Yeah, so. It is really, and it's something that I don't think you're fully aware of it until you're in a story that you are ready for. In a way, because it's like, if you don't know what you don't know, you know.
No, it's true.
But then when you're into a project that's really grooving, you're like, oh, I see. This is what I'm capable of, and that's not working, so that needs something else. And then, yeah, nothing levels you up faster than learning to triage feedback. And I bet you'll find as you go through the rest of the novellas, you'll be able to self-edit those other two novellas a lot stronger than you had, because you'll be able to hear those, those feedbacks of like such and such characters and working for this reader, so you can like anticipate that and build that character up better.
Yeah.
And it's not something you can learn until you do it.
Yeah. Well, that's like like I had expected to get the feedback at times. You had to show and not tell. And my friend today, he's like, "Oh, I thought you really did this." I go, I go, "That's everybody though." I go, "That's people who, have written their 15th novel sometimes." I said, I switched POVs. Usually I do third person for fantasy, and I really like first person for urban fantasy. So I switched it. It's been a change,
I'll learn.
But I think that will help me overall if I can get better at something I have just started doing the last year and a half. And if somebody's going to read it, then I think that shows a lot of overall improvement when I was focusing, on that kind of thing within just regular fantasy. But yeah, it was with the third person POV, but it was difficult to switch. So I had expected that feedback as well, and I don't want it to be like that, right? And he was like, "Oh, there's places here and there." So that's just something I think that to be aware of. And he's like, "It's not that it's not readable, but there's just it's pulling me out at times." And I'm like, "All right, cool, that's amazing feedback." But I think a lot of people starting out maybe wouldn't like that feedback, but I'm efficient. Like I have a kid, you guys know I have a podcast, like I have all these books, like I'm trying to do something. I'm not trying to work summer school no more, like I'm trying to I just want to come home and spend time with my kid. I'm doing all these extra positions and stuff, so I'm a teacher. I'm over it. Like kids are great, but I'm like, I just want to spend time with my kids. So I want to write all summer and do different things during the year. And I said to Logan yesterday, he goes, I'm not trying to, sway you. I said, no, I was like, I'm like, let's just do this thing. You said, Chris, so I want to be the best it can be. And I want people to read it and enjoy it. And I want to get better too. And the only way to do that is to listen to people's feedback that know more than you. So maybe it's because I'm a martial artist and I've done a bunch of different martial arts. I'm ranked in like 5 different ones. So to be a black belt in one and then have to go to white belt in another, you have to take a lot of feedback. So
I bet.
So I think I just got beat down enough where I kind of just don't have an ego anymore. Literally, physically, seriously. Like when you get thrown in judo and you think you're tough, and then you get thrown and somebody cracks your ribs, it really does. It humbles you, and it also gets you prepped too to be like I'm a grappler, right? So I'm like, all right, another round, another round. So I think my wife, she goes, I think it's a perfect mix with being a writer. I'm like, that's fair, because you beat yourself up, and sometimes your editor does, and sometimes your feedback does. But if you want to do the thing, you got to get back up again and just keep doing it. So
if you're serious about this, you have to be willing to be humble. And then, but also like there's a bit of pride in it too, where like the thing about feedback is it's like your reader said, you don't actually have to take it in, all the time, and in some cases their feedback is an opportunity to change something totally different than what they're talking about. Because if that moment didn't land, maybe the moment is fine, but the chapter before it didn't set it up properly. So I think there's something in learning to take feedback where you're not writing their book, you're still writing your book, but their impressions can help you figure out the battles that you want to fight. And some of them are like, I know I use the filter word that much in this chapter, but I did that on purpose because they're going through XYZ thing, and so I'm actually going to double down on that and make it or whatever the thing is. And and then it's like you're armored against, other people saying it, because you knew it was coming, but you made that decision for a reason. And if other people don't jive with it, at least you made it for a reason.
Well, that was one thing, is like we were talking about like a character that needs to be cut. I'm like, no, because I said there's other things but we like changed a different relationship that made that character make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that, it was like, it was so close to fitting. And then he's like, well, what if you just did this? And then it shifts the focus, but you still get everything. And there's like a character, and we're like, okay, I'm like, well, how would this work, in the real world? And I was trying to figure out better. And he was like, well, if you just change this person's job and then they still keep the role as the parent, he goes, you can still have this kid in here that has to do all these things. Because there's a kid in there where Nathaniel is trying to save him, and he reminds him of his brother, and he's got several siblings, and especially that age, and I want that to be something that pulls you to him. You see this guy that could literally decimate you with his pinky, but he will feel guilty about it, but he's still going to do it if it needs to be done, but I wanted him, again, I don't want him to be, an a-hole. I wanted you to be, like there with him and be like, oh, wow. Like, and think like, could I really do what he's going to do? And I don't know. It's interesting. The more I dive into him. Yeah. And like, as a parent, I'm a pretty nice guy. And I said this with Herman Stern. I'm a really nice guy, but like, I'm a teacher. Like, kids are my thing. I protected kids and helped kids learn for more than half my life. And, I'm a pretty chill guy, but if you endanger a child, especially my child, but anybody's child, like, I ain't gonna be nice no more. And, I had to, and I was like, I kind of want to explore this a little bit. And that's where one of my themes for the series comes in, is I really want you to understand that Nathaniel hunts monsters because somebody has to, right? And that goes for, society, I think, too. There are some people that, like, they're just bad people, and, Alfred, right? Some people just want to, some men just want to watch the world burn. Well, you're going to need a Batman, in my opinion. And Nathaniel's the Batman. He just doesn't take credit for it. And you'll never see him. He's in the shadows fighting the monsters, but he really has to be careful, because that theme is really that there's a monster, could be a monster within all of us to some degree. And it's really what you do with the rest of your actions and your abilities that determine really who you are. And then, I mentioned I have ogres and overlords too, and we're going to get to see how some of these monsters act as well. And some of them will surprise you. And I like that, because it's like, okay, who's the real monster then? And that really is kind of the theme of the entire universe. And you kind of explore there. There are monsters that will literally take you in the night and eat you in my world. But there are others that maybe they'll stop them. And there might be some humans that do the same, vice versa, So, and I just wanted to kind of explore that. And maybe it's the D&D person in me, or, the game master, but I liked, that sliding, lawful evil, or whatever, to lawful good, whatever you want to say, right? And I'm like, the real world's so gray, and
it's
I just wanted a
clean cut.
Yeah, like Harry Dresden. I love Harry because he does so much crap to himself because he's trying to do better for others. But I get that, right? I can connect with that. And I wanted you to be able to look at a character and just think like, holy crap, if push came to shove, would I be able to do what he did and live with myself? And then figure out how he does it. And he just became such an in-depth character. He's not just somebody that's just like, oh, I'm going to put a stake in you or whatever. Like, he's a very in-depth character. And I don't know, it just made the world so much thicker, if that makes sense, and inky black.
It makes it more lush and
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm getting more like Mike as the days go by, so it's fine. I'm gonna kill that character, it's fine.
Eventually the cast gets too many. Hold the herd a little bit.
Yeah, I find I'm doing that, or I have to be stricter with myself in like this other idea where it's like, okay, I'm gonna name this guy and I'm gonna like him a hell of a lot, but I intended to kill him when I invented him, and I'm gonna carry through this time. Because he's gonna drop. Like, it doesn't matter how much I like him, he's gone.
He's not getting his own trilogy.
No, he's not getting his own trilogy. Yeah.
I know somebody that did that. They like changed their mind and that character became really
Oh
popular.
God!
And then they gave him their own trilogy. And then finally they're like, I was gonna kill him. They're like, and then eventually they did. In like book 7 out of 8 or whatever. And it was just like it got pretty crazy. So I definitely know people that have that happen.
I've got a lot of those in the Dominion, and it's just like on the one hand it's fun, but then like even one of them was like, oh, he's rumored to have been dead. Like everyone thinks he's dead, and I was like, oh God, I like him so much. Maybe he just faked his death, and he'll come back into the series. It's just like, oh, this is bad. I need some control over these people. I gotta kill more of them. So I'm practicing that, which I think kind of pivots into what you were saying about like not being ready. Where like I needed to take a break from the big series for a minute to like practice some skills in this other idea where I don't know, maybe I learn how to have less of a heart, kind of like Fletcher does.
What? Feel attacked.
But also just flexing some different muscles on the focus and stuff, so that when I pivot back into the Dominion, that next book gets to be as good as it deserves to be.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Like Mike, you and I talked about that recently, when you were talking about with you and your daughter with the middle grade, right? Like,
yeah,
like that's kind of the same thing. I like how you put that, Krystle, like kind of like, you have to work on those muscles sometimes, and then that helps you overall. So I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find that books have two sort of modes. One is pulling teeth, which means I shouldn't be working on it. And the other one is the book just falls out of me. And it's like
I wake
effortless.
up in the morning thinking about it. I'm cooking lunch thinking about it. I'm doing
it feels like
about it. I go to bed at night thinking about it
to the extreme. And has 7 books. And he's like, which one's gonna fall out of me today? This one. All right, cool. I'll work on that one. That one's getting difficult. I'm gonna work on this one now.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't know. So Robert E. Howard, his friend, was said in one of his like the biography on him, said that he would watch Robert on his farmhouse, and he would be out in the patio, like the front porch, and he'd have his writing desk out there. And he said they'd go out there, they'd be chit-chatting, and he's like, all right, I got to write now. And he said that you could almost see Conan sitting there talking to Robert, telling him the stories. And one day he asked Robert E. Howard, he says, how come none of these are in order? All your Conans are all over the place, And he said, well, that's the story he tells me on that day. And I'm like, isn't that like Mike or you, Chris, right? You guys, we might tell a different story today or tomorrow, right? They're not linear. And I'm like, God, that's always stuck with me. And, so if a character talks to me, I'm like, okay. And there was one day where I was literally thinking about this first novella, The Hunted, and I can't remember. I was like watching something, and it was with a Marine, and all of a sudden, you know what it was? It was Jack Reacher. It was the first Reacher season, and all of a sudden Reacher comes in and does his thing, and Nathaniel all of a sudden in my head just goes, I'm like that guy. Like I'm like that guy. And I'm like, what do you mean? I almost had to like have this conversation while I'm watching, the first season of Reacher. And he's like, no, he goes, I'm not that big. He goes, but that's what I would do. And then it got to a certain point, which I don't want to spoil for people, in Reacher, where you find out why Reacher is no longer in the Marines. And Nathaniel's like, that's my guy right there. Like, I would do the same thing. And all of a sudden, his characterization just came to me. And I was like, I connected with Alan's character, Jack Reacher, so much better from the TV show, because it ended up being, a similar character to what I had in my head. And ever since then, Nathaniel will not shut up to me. And now that I've gotten pretty much like what the first 3 prequel novellas are going to be, now he's telling me, okay, this is what's happening in book 1. I'm like, thank God it's taken us 1.5 years to get to this actual story of, like book 1. But it's been a lot better though. My buddy, my best friend, I was, I sent him the first novella, and I was telling him what's changed over the last 1.5 years. And he was just like, he's not a BSer. He's going to tell you straight up. And which I like, he's like, Mike, he's like, this sucks, and now he's like, this is a much better idea. He goes, this just sounds so much better. So yeah, I was glad I was patient and took his feedback. And I don't know. I've tried a lot of different writing strategies, but if a character's talking to me, I'm going to write. And that's where recently, I just was stressed, about getting feedback. And, you know how it is. I just needed to take a break, and I've been doing my dark fantasy, and it's actually on. I call it my fantasy. I got one where I'm just working on an old campaign that we had, and the story came to me. This outline just blew me out of the water, and it was on a lot of our old experiences with our old party, and I got this just crazy crew. And all of a sudden, it started to layer itself like an onion. And my wife, she's like, "You are like cranking this thing out." And I said, "Well, I'm just, I'm just like waiting for my edits and stuff and feedback." So I said, I might as well crank out, the outline in at least 3 full chapters. And I'm actually about to put the band together actually this week. Waiting on, edits and stuff. And it's called Whispers of the Dead, and it's a different world than I normally write in for my fantasy. But I don't know. I have 2 actually, so this is like my 3rd world. New... Yeah. So it ends up being pretty neat. But yeah, it was just fun. If you love D&D, and I kill a lot of people, like a lot of characters and stuff. So Mike's gonna love it.
The Fletcher method.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited for Mike to read it because I have a couple characters in mind and different things that I think you really like, Mike. I think you both actually. I feel like you guys have pretty similar tastes, so I'm actually really excited to send it to you guys when I'm done. But yeah, it's just like kind of fun. But I've just been waiting on feedback. I was just stressed. I was like, I just have to do something. And he's a skald. My old skald's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So I was like, fine. And him and my friend's dwarf just wouldn't shut up. So they're buddies, and they're rogues, and they get into trouble. And it's just been a lot of fun. So it just, really helped me de-stress. And I think now I'm kind of, more ready than I would have been to accept feedback, if that makes sense. So it kind of put me in that right state of mind. So.
It does make sense. Yeah. Where it's like you needed the time to, I don't know, just process that it's done and it's coming and it's gonna, it still needs work, but you're gonna make it better.
Yeah. Like now I was like, I think I was more ready for the feedback. Not that I wouldn't have taken it, but there were some things that clicked, I think, better.
But
so.
I think having that perspective of a little bit of distance, like if I got feedback the day that I finished writing it, I would be so devastated. Like, first of all, how dare you finish it so fast? And second of all, no, I needed some time over here to it's almost like you grieve for a moment where this thing that was exclusively yours for a long period of time is now no longer exclusively yours. It's now available to other people. And you just need a second to reframe your relationship with that idea.
Before they start telling you what they don't like about it.
Exactly.
Well, it's no longer just yours anymore, right?
Exactly. Yeah. While you're working on it, it's your baby. But then as soon as you hand it to another person, it's a product. And you need that second to refocus your intentions. It's not your baby that you're going to coddle anymore. Now it needs to be sellable.
It's been thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gone rabid.
So I feel every year as like a coach, like, I spend so much time and energy, with kids. And then I'm in a school now where I have the same group for 4 years as a social studies teacher.
Oh, wow.
So it's a little better, but I just met this group of seniors. They've been awesome. And I'm like, what is it going to be like when I don't see you every day? And I have them every day. And it's kind of crazy. And one of my old athletes,
is a long time
we still talk and stuff, and and I'm like, I met her as a freshman, and she's like, about to graduate school and all these things, and I'm just like, I'm not ready, like I'm like a parent,
baby.
Yeah. I'm like, you're still that little kid, and my son, my son, I'm like really focused on. People ask me like, why haven't you finished this? I'm like, I'm spending time with my kid.
I got a kid. They're only
like one of these days he's not going to want to hang out with me anymore. And he's going to be on his
eventually
phone or whatever.
Get mouthy.
Yep. I can write then,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to enjoy it. Like when Mike's like, oh, we're right in the middle grade with my daughter. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I got to figure out. I think you and I talked, right? I'm like, I figure out how to get my kid into fantasy or just reading or something. Because I was like, God, I'd be like, the whole time, right? I'd be like, well, Mike and his daughter wrote a book together, like Incepted.
Yeah.
That just sounds so cool.
Comic books and graphic novels. That was the doorway. Wings of Fire graphic novels.
Wings of Fire. Yeah. Did you guys do the Warriors too? The cats.
I bought her the first couple of Warriors books, and she was like,
she bounced. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wings of Fire. I love that series, especially the graphic novels.
Yeah.
So picky.
Yeah, my
right?
youngest is more aggressively into the graphic novels than any of the other kids were. But then at the same time, like, she's also starting to draw now. So like, I think about Mike and your daughter and like all of the things that she's going through, and it's like, yes, my child, do art. You'll
Be a
suffer as
future
much as
book
I will,
cover
but
designer.
Yeah, and then we talked, right, Mike? Because then you could just
yeah,
pay
it's family
her,
business
just be like,
now.
yeah. I've
My
been paying
daughter
you
was
this whole
like,
time.
You pay
Yeah.
artists
I've
what
been
for a book
feeding you.
cover? She's like, I can do that. Like, all right, get on it.
Yeah,
You have the
yeah,
like
just gotta
behind
learn.
you. You're like, here's Felix. Now go. Like once you can do this,
Yeah, exactly. Hold up Felix's work is when you can pull that off, you have
Yeah,
a
I'll
job.
pay you. Yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
a good
I'll pay you
strategy. I'm gonna
Felix
remember
money.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Get
are
some
hitting
prints.
half an
Yeah.
hour. This seems like a
Oh yeah, that
lovely
was
spot for us to wrap it.
Perfect.
yeah. Family
So,
business
thank you.
here at the Dripping Bucket. We're planning our respective empires.
Mhm. Putting our kids to work as slave labor.
It's not
We will do
slave
art for
labor.
grilled cheese sandwiches.
That's awesome.
Like father, like daughter.
Alrighty, thanks again for joining us, Dan, and we will do this again.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so
thanks
much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for coming on. That was fantastic.
Thank you.